Well, joining me live now in the studio is Sultan Barakat. He's a professor in public policy at Hamad Bin Khalifa University in Qatar. Really good to have you with us, Professor. Let's start with the Iranian attack and counterattack. We've heard there from our correspondent in Tel Aviv that the Israelis are planning both a military and a diplomatic response. Do you think that either of those will threaten a wider, a more direct conflict with Iran?
Well, obviously, if they happen, they would, but I doubt that they will take place. I think the limited episode that we watched together over the last couple of days is sort of the end of the story for now. It involves a win-win for at least 4 or 5 of the key sides in this conflict at the expense of the Palestinians, and it's very important to point that out. As far as the Iranian concerned, it's a win because they've asserted their sovereignty. They look like they have now a greater, stronger posture against Israel, but not just for Israel, everybody else in the region. Now everyone is aware of the range of their missiles, that how far they can reach and how accurate they can be, at least in terms of direction. And if you can reach the military bases in Israel, you can reach it in Saudi Arabia, you can reach it anywhere around you. So from their perspective, I think they've done well, despite the fact that this is not the first real threat to their interests. I mean, the Israelis have hit them more than 300 times in Syria and Lebanon, different targets. It's the first time in what they considered their own sovereign soil, i.e. an embassy. But they've hit them much harder elsewhere. So they have got that established. The Israelis, unfortunately, based on the provocation first and then the Iranian reaction that followed, have managed to reverse the tide, which really started to turn against them, public-wise, opinion around the world, including the little and the very conservative criticism that started to come from European capitals, United States and others. No one can now stand up and criticize Israel because it has been now established that their existence is threatened. Someone can reach them with missiles. And therefore, it follows we must accelerate supplying them with weapons. And this is really what Netanyahu was waiting for. He has now another green card for resupply of weapons from the United States in particular. And in particular, he's looking for strategic bombers, the F-35s, etc. And those will probably, again, bypass the Congress based on this event that happened in the last few days. And from the American perspective, of course, as far as Biden is concerned, it has justified and vindicated him in terms of his support to Israel. That look, all our investment in the region, including the air defenses, etc., were worthwhile. You could see that they work. They are important for the protection of Israel. And finally, I think for the small neighbors like Jordan and others, again, it's showing the rest of the world, particularly the West, that they are reliable and they can invest more into them. But all of this, I'm afraid, comes at the expense of Gaza and the Palestinians. The last couple of days distracted people from what's going on in Gaza and in the West Bank. And you can see that the Israelis have not slowed down. They continue with their attack. They're systematic. Until now, Netanyahu talks about the possibility of invading Rafah. No real plans have been put forward to how he's going to protect or look after the 1.5 million people who are displaced in Rafah and so on. So I think everybody will settle to this. I doubt very much that the Israelis will be foolish enough to retaliate. Certainly not now. But what they will do, and I know they will do this, is they will take this as a card and keep it under their belt. That Iran has attacked us. Anytime Iran is in the threat of taking out its nuclear facilities based on the excuse of being attacked first.
Well, as you say, it isn't the first time that Iranian targets have been attacked by Israel. A number of Iranian nuclear scientists or prominent generals have been targeted as well. But this seems to have been the final straw for them. But as you alluded to in your previous answer, before this attack, we did see Israel's allies, such as the United States, really push back on Benjamin Netanyahu's plans during this war. Joe Biden was warning him against invading Rafah. It was also saying that it might make further military support for Israel conditional on protecting aid workers after the Israelis killed those 7 international aid workers a couple of weeks ago. Do you think all that has changed now? Will Israel essentially once again have a carte blanche and unconditional support to do what it's like? And could that embolden Netanyahu to push through with his plans to invade Rafah?
I think it will make it much more difficult for those countries to criticize Israel. I mean, maybe the public opinion will not shift much, and I hope it doesn't, because that has been absolutely watershed moment, that the public across the world is now understanding better what the Palestinian situation is and how they should be standing by them. But I think it will be much more difficult for the governments, particularly where there are strong Israeli lobbies in operation, and that is in the main capitals in Washington, in London, in Paris, in Rome, where they do have an influence. It will be slightly more difficult for them to say, look, we need to keep the Israelis under check, because now everybody could turn and say, well, look, they really want to push them into the sea, they want to end Israel, look at the amount. I mean, this whole scare story about the numbers of 300 drones and its own is quite something. Although probably the specialists know that these drones are absolutely useless. I mean, it's an odd type of weapon to use to attack a country that you want to teach a lesson to.
Okay, Sultan Barakat, we will have to leave it there, but it's always good to get your analysis. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.